And so he got asked about what might happen, what comes next. And here's what he said.
Dan, I hope I don't misquote you, but you said out on the court something about UConn giving you all the resources you need. Can we interpret that to mean you intend to be back at UConn next year? You're not going to entertain any conversations with anybody else that might have a job coming open tomorrow?
Yeah. I don't think that's a concern. My wife, you should have her answer that. Yeah.
We can maybe arrange a press conference for Mrs. Hurley in the morning. Congratulations, Coach.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she'll answer that question better than I can.
So the great Mark Fratto, by the way, just setting up the Mrs. Hurley press conference. But that doesn't sound like a man who's going to go to Kentucky if Kentucky calls. But it'll be interesting to see what happens next. Rod in the chat says, Kentucky about to be UCLA, irrelevant. Listen to the DeMarcus Cousins comments with Rachel Nichols. Well, of course, Boogie Cousins is going to defend Cal, but I mean, there was a Kentucky before Cal and Boogie Cousins. Kentucky's won 7 national titles. 6 of them came before John Calipari. There is not one coach that is bigger than Kentucky basketball.
No, and I think we look at the 2 names that have we've seen some names kind of fall off of that hot board, but the 2 names that are still up at the top of it are Scott Drew, who, by the way, had 2 potential lottery picks in this upcoming NBA draft, along with some veterans who are really, really good this year. They were a top 10 team for most of the season. So if you don't think he can build a roster at Kentucky, then I'm not sure what you've been watching throughout the course of his career. A recent national champion as well there at Baylor. He's been able to find that mix of transfer portal and recruiting cycle. The other one, Billy Donovan, who until last night was the most recent coach to go back-to-back in the national championship game. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you think that Kentucky is just going to fade away, that whichever coach takes over is not going to be able to get things going there. I'm not sure what you've seen from any of these coaches that have been named that would suggest that, but I sure have not gotten that impression from anyone who might take over the Kentucky job.
Well, you know who it's not going to be? It's not going to be Jay Wright.
Nope.
Because he got on the broadcast before the game and said, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm good. And that one was an easy one to figure out, because Jay Wright didn't want to coach at Villanova anymore. He was tired of the way recruiting had gotten. He didn't like the NIL piece of it. He didn't like managing all that stuff. Well, at Kentucky, that's ratcheted up 10 times over what it is at Villanova. So you knew that wasn't going to be his cup of tea. The other one, and I don't think this was particularly surprising either, given what he just signed, is Nate Oats at Alabama, who put out a statement on Monday night that was very clear. Said, I am fully committed to this team and this university. We have already accomplished some great things here, and there's nothing I want more than for the University of Alabama to win its first national championship in men's basketball. Despite any rumors to the contrary, rest assured that I will continue that pursuit as your head coach. Roll Tide. So Nate Oats has an $18 million buyout that just went up because he just redid his deal. And the folks who cover Alabama put out the signature page yesterday of that contract. I know there were some folks saying, oh, it's not quite done. It's not signed. No, it's been signed by Nate Oats and the president and the AD and the board of trustees. It's done. So he has an $18 million buyout, which he was completely cool with taking because I think he likes it at Alabama.
Yeah, this is the new thing in college sports, apparently, fans announcing that a coach has not signed his extension. And I don't really know what that really means, because unless you're one of the big-time boosters, that really doesn't change anything. If you're going after a guy with a $12 million buyout, why wouldn't you go after a guy with an $18 million buyout? But regardless, the Oats situation, we've talked off the show and on the show, I think, about how comfortable he is at Alabama, how much he enjoys being the coach of that program, what he has kind of built, similar to what we're seeing from Bruce Pearl as well. Just a comfortability there, a guy who has some pride in being the coach who brought this school to this level. And if you're Nate Oats and you look over at Kentucky, of course it's the Kentucky job. It's going to draw your interest. You're going to take a look at it, at least when you hear your name connected to it. It's a sense of pride. but you've got resources at Alabama. You've got people willing to put in that money to the NIL program. You just got your big extension. And so if you're Nate Oats and you're comfortable there, your family enjoys it there, you've had success over Kentucky in recent years. Alabama has had more SEC tournament success, more SEC regular season success, and more NCAA tournament success now than Kentucky over the last few seasons. So if you're Nate Oats, you've got a good thing going, and there's really no reason that you have to make that jump. So he decides that he wants to stick around. He gets some commitment from donors, I'm sure. And so
Greg Byrne, the AD, threw out the NIL pitch immediately. Within 10 minutes of Nate Oats making that statement, Greg Byrne tweeted out, "Hey, here's how you donate to Yay Alabama," which is their collective. And
there's some transfers that I've heard they're already looking to throw that money at. So it'll be fun to watch over these next couple of weeks. The Jay Wright thing, though, I do just want to real quick get your opinion on. How many times does he have to say in no uncertain terms that he will never coach college basketball again before we believe him? Because it seems like he comes up for every job, and yet every time he's in front of a microphone, even if he's not asked about it, he is making it very clear that he has no interest in this profession.
Yeah. So he's Bob Stoops. That's what he is. Bob Stoops is the name that comes up for everything, because Bob actually retired from Oklahoma at a younger age than Jay when he retired from Villanova. Jay was 60 when he retired. Bob was 56 when he retired at Oklahoma. But Bob Stoops' name came up. Like when Florida State hired Mike Norvell, there were so many Florida State fans convinced that Bob Stoops was coming. And I remember talking to some of their beat writers at the time. I was on a podcast with some of them. And I'm like, guys, Bob Stoops is never coming. Like, he's not coaching in college football again. He hates recruiting right now. He has no desire to recruit, and it's only going to get harder. So I don't know where you're getting this information from. He's not going to do it. And they were like, but, and I'm like, no, there's no buts. Like, he's selling tequila. He's happy. Yeah. And Jay Wright, same thing. Like, he's amazing on those broadcasts. He's incredible on television, which we always knew he would be, even when he was coaching. But he's so good at that. The pressure's off. Why not coast into? Because I'm sure, look, Jay Wright, obviously a high achiever, type A type person, but everybody gets a little burned out at some point. This allows you to stay in the game, keep a foot in the game, make some cash, but the pressure's not there at all.
Yeah. And you know what? If he gets tired of being on the sideline, he wants to get back in the game, the NBA is right there. And any team that has an opening will hire him. And I guarantee you that a team that is in playoff contention would give him a chance to walk in there and take a shot for a couple of seasons to get an NBA title. So I don't think he will ever return to college basketball. He has made it clear the reasons why, and those reasons are not changing with NIL, the transfer portal, just the grind of the schedule that these coaches go through. So I think we can put the Jay Wright rumors to bed, no matter what opening we're talking about here in college basketball. From this point forward, I'm not going to bring him up. I'm sure other people will, though.
He'll be on every list still, every single one. Rod in the chat says Billy Donovan is not coming back to today's college basketball. Actually, I think today's college basketball is probably more preferable to him than the version he left, because the version he left was the old sneaker companies, basically directing recruits everywhere. This version is a little bit different. This version is probably much more similar to what he's used to in the NBA. Now, you've got to be your own GM, so he would have to be like when he was at Oklahoma City, like he'd have to be the Sam Presti. But I think that would be more amenable to him than the version he left. That said, we don't know if he wants to come back. I think the Bulls have just not been able to cultivate a superstar while he's been there. So, we'll see how the people in Chicago feel and what he wants to do. But that's really more of a personal choice, I think, for him. And until we hear from him, they've got a game on Tuesday. So we may hear him say, you know what? I'm good. I'm planning on staying in the NBA for a long time. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that Billy Donovan one, it is interesting. You talked about how much better he fits in this era than the last. I think back when you say that to Dan Hurley's comments about how he can coach them harder because there's this accountability aspect to the NIL and transfer portal era. So I think if Billy Donovan could find that happy medium, I think he'd probably be happy in the college ranks again. But like you said, you got to be the CEO. You can hire people to help you with all that stuff, but you've got to be the one making those kind of GM type decisions. It's a lot on your plate and it's a grind. So it is the Kentucky job, though. It's Billy Donovan, Kentucky.
He could kick them out of the gym and tell them to come back 4 hours later, which was one of his patented moves back in the day at Florida. I don't think you can do that with the Chicago Bulls, but you can definitely, if the practice vibes aren't right, throw them out of the gym and bring them back in 4 hours. So this is going to be an interesting situation. I'm with you. I think Scott Drew makes the most sense. I think Bruce Pearl was born for the job, but as we're talking about with Nate Oats can let Kalen DeBoer handle all the pressure.
Yes.
But Alabama's going to give Nate Oats exactly the same things that the big-time college basketball programs have. He'll have all the same resources. He'll get paid the same. So why deal with that? It really is the kind of reverse mirror on Mark Stoops and whoever gets hired at Kentucky. Mark Stoops has the paycheck and all of the resources that all these other football programs have, and none of the expectations. And yet he still almost took the Texas A&M job. If their regions hadn't revolted, he would have been Texas A&M's coach. But you can do that. Like at Alabama in basketball, actually any SEC school that is a quote-unquote football school, there's so much money now in the SEC that they can't help but pass along a good amount to basketball, which, by the way, men's basketball is profitable at most of the SEC schools. So they're gonna give you everything you need at Alabama, at Auburn if you're Bruce Pearl. So you don't necessarily have to jump to Kentucky to have a capability to compete.
Yeah, the last step for Alabama is to get that new arena. Get the new arena.
Coleman is a barn.
I've been hearing about since I was in high school, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, Coleman Coliseum is a barn, like absolute barn. Now, I will say, pretty cool when they're good.
Yeah,
pretty good environment when they're good. The only arena in the SEC that well, there's two. The two arenas in the SEC that nobody seems to be able to figure out how to make them good, and even putting really good players in them hasn't worked over the years. Stegman Coliseum in Athens, the Maravich Assembly Center at LSU. Now, I would argue that Kim Mulkey's figured out how to make the PMAC hop, but even when LSU's had great teams, it's not been the greatest environment.
See, I can't believe you didn't throw Vanderbilt in there. Those sight
I
lines,
love Vanderbilt. I love Memorial Gym. Like Memorial Magic's the coolest thing ever when they're going.
I just can't stand the sight line. The bench on the baseline. I
don't want that to ever change. Never ever change.
I need the tight shot. They expanded out and it bothers me. I can't do it.
Well, they're letting the coaches come down the sideline now at Memorial. Because they had to. There was no other choice.
But now, how do you make a substitute? You got to run all the way back down the other way to make your substitutions.
I call that a home court advantage. You call that weird. I call that a home court advantage. So no, do not change Memorial Gym. Protect Memorial Gym at all costs. But figure out how to make Stegman Coliseum rock.
Yeah.
Because Georgia should figure out how to be good at basketball. There's no excuse to be bad at basketball. But yeah, the Kentucky thing, Kentucky's going to hire someone pretty good. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.